The 76ers do something they're actually supposed to do. They lose to the Toronto Raptors. It was a big loss. We'll break it down right here on Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On 76ers. We're your host, Keith Pompey, 76ers beat writer. I am Kayla Santiago, sideline reporter for the Delaware Bluecoats. The 76ers do the thing and they lose. Before we get into the action, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe in addition wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, you can check us out on our free daily newsletter on LockedOnDaily.com. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets and win the first $5 bet if their first $5 bet is able to win. Keith, 118-105 lost. The Sixers, they did it. They lose. It's about time that they finally follow the script that they were intended to have. And now they're tied with the fifth worst record in the NBA.
Yeah, it was crazy, right? Because it's kind of like, people here and all over Philly and 76ers fans everywhere are basically celebrating. I mean, they were basically cheering every time the Raptors made a basket. I mean, it got to a point where, like, before we came on there, we were talking about Jeff Dowtin. It was like, yo, bro, what are you doing? Like, tonight's not the night to have a career game. Mm-mm. So, it was just one of those games where, as you said, it was a must lose from a tanking standpoint, and they lost. And right now they're tied for the fifth worst record in the NBA, which gives them the fifth best odds to get the first pick in the draft lottery. So there's a lot of people excited in Philadelphia over a loss.
Now it's reverse standings right now because we're saying the fifth best to get that number one pick or get in that top six pick as well, which is something they absolutely need because it's protected. And on the other side, this team, tanking, whatever it may be. To me, it seems like the organization is starting to invest in the future a little bit because, time after time, we both were kind of saying, well, we don't think they want to tank. They're really close to that 10 spot. And now I think they put on, their face and they said, it is go time. It is time to tank because this team, ruling a lot of guys out. You're trying to lose these games essentially without fully actually losing these games and getting fined or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, Jeff Dowtin, Keith, listen, I like covering Jeff from a analyst standpoint, and I'm able to cover him with the Bluecoats, and he always has good games in Delaware. But we're watching this game, and I'm saying, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. I know you might want a little bit of revenge. I know you had to do it with the Raptors before, but at the same time, this is what you cannot be doing. He has a career high in 20 points, 9 for 14, 2 for 3 from three-point. And in addition to that, it's kind of something we've talked about before where these young guys, yeah, it's a lot of two-ways. It's some G leaguers and things like that. But they're saying, I'm playing an NBA game. I want to go out there and show people what I can do too.
Yeah, true. And yeah, it is that because let's face it, a lot of these guys, this is an audition. I mean, we look at these teams, they're playing these teams, and a lot of these teams are guys who are, G League guys or guys who signed two-way contracts in the middle of the season or guys who signed free agency. And they're looking at it like this is my audition for another team. But the one thing you said, when we talk about it, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about play-in tournament, right? Yeah. You look at it where the Chicago Bulls are 27-38. They won 3 in a row, right? Right now, we look at the 76ers. They're 5 games behind them. 5 games behind them. So it looks as if unless Chicago falls 100 totally apart, the Toronto Raptors and other teams fall apart. It's like the 76ers are going to be the outside looking in. So that's why a lot of people are excited because you know what? And let's face it, the Toronto Raptors beat them for the 3rd time this season. So if these teams should finish with a tied record, the 76ers are going to have more lottery balls than them in the lottery. So, yeah, it's one of those things where the Bulls are starting to play well and the 76ers are not, and you realize that they're not going to be a play-in team.
And I look at it from the Bulls standpoint too. They have the Nets coming up tonight at 8 p.m. and the Rockets, the Jazz, the Suns. So they have a stretch of games that they could probably win. And if you're the Bulls right now, you're saying, even though the Nets, and 76ers are tied, they're still the same margin of games behind the Chicago Bulls. So if I'm the Bulls, I'm saying, all right, we got this 10 spot on lockdown because everybody below us is really, really trying to tank. And then if we don't get this 10 spot, we're kind of in that weird position you're worried about the 76ers falling into, where you don't even make the play-in and you don't even get a top 6 pick either from that standpoint. So I think Chicago has got that 10 seed on lock. I think they need to go for it. I think the 76ers need to stay away from it. They need to stay back. And for Philadelphia right now, I think it's so interesting because we've talked about before just ticket prices going down and fans not wanting to come to the games and this, that, and the other. But Keith, it's going to be interesting now when fans do go to the games. They're going to say, oh, I want to buy a cheap ticket so I can cheer for the other team so that the 76ers can tank, because that's what it seems like right now. You're cheering for the Raptors in that game last night. We heard a little bit of those cheers too.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, yeah, it's going to be crazy right about now, with all that. But, it's funny because they're in a tough spot because, if you looked at this game last night, there was a point where the Toronto Raptors were like blowing the Sixers out, and it was kind of similar to the Utah Jazz game, to where all of a sudden you look around and you're saying, oh, wow, do I really want to do this? And then all of a sudden the Sixers came back, right? But yeah, it's crazy. But, the one scary part about the 76ers, something that stood out to me really about this game was Lonnie Walker the fourth. He comes in. As soon as he gets in the game, he goes up for a rebound. He lands on his back, and then he hits his head. They said that he doesn't have a concussion, but he didn't return. You kind of feel bad for this guy because, here's a guy that's, trying to show that he can, return to the NBA and become a contributor. And now he's added to the injury list of all the guys who, are unable to play. And he probably won't play and maybe, you look at it, he may not play in Friday's game. So that's a tough one, a tough pill to swallow, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's one of those injuries too where it's not necessarily you're saying, oh, well, a bad knee or a bad ankle. It's kind of the way he fell. It was almost like that freak injury situation, and it looked really bad too. And Lonnie Walker, I mean, he's been playing well. He's been somebody that we've been highlighting too. We've liked what we see from him, see if he could be on the team going forward. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you in that I felt bad. You never want to see anybody get hurt or anybody fall like that in addition, but especially in a game where the 76ers don't necessarily care about the overall score. Certain individual guys are probably trying to get theirs. But at the same time, if you're Lonnie Walker, you're saying, yeah, the 76ers might not care, but what I care about is how they see me right now and how if they want to keep me or if other teams want to look at me and I can try to continue the trajectory of my career in the NBA. So it's not something that you want to see happening, especially because these individual guys, as you alluded to, Keith, already, they're fighting for what they want to be seen as in the NBA. If you're on a tanking team, you want to be a guy that can go out there, that's going to put it all out there, regardless of what your team wants to do. And Lonnie Walker has done some really good things for the 76ers. So you hope that he's okay. The no concussion, what they're saying is a good thing. But at the same time, the fall, I guess it looked worse than it actually was possibly because it did not look too good.
No, it didn't at all. It really didn't. It didn't look good. And it's weird. It's one of those things where you saw, Nick Nurse standing there with the opposing coach, and they both were talking about it. So you have to imagine that it was a scary moment for both of them. And I'm pretty sure some people probably even heard it. Boom, laying there, and you feel bad for them, and you wish them well, and everything. But again, it's all about safety, right? Don't come back on the floor until you're 100%.
Absolutely. Once again, we don't think he'll be good or ready, most likely not, for that game on Friday against the Pacers. That is in Philadelphia as well. We'll keep continuing to talk about the Tank Bowl and some other prospects as well for the 76ers team when we come back right here on Locked On 76ers. But first, we have to tell you from Intuit TurboTax. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering if you were going to get any money back. And then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guarantee. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile apps. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. And every check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Surprising insights. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. All in one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances as well, track speeding, and even plan long-term goals. Easy collaborations. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever, and you can track shared and personal accounts. Make sure you set goals and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Make sure you go check it out today. 76ers lose in this game 118-105. Some people calling it the Tank Bowl, the Tankathon, whichever you might call it. The Toronto Raptors completely just having fun out there. 76ers have their 41st different starting lineup as well. And this is an important stretch of games for Philadelphia for the future. When you look at it, when you're looking at the next upcoming games against the Pacers, the Mavs, who are in bad shape as well, the Rockets, the Thunder, the Spurs, so on and so forth for this team. But Keith, I want to go back to a little bit what we were talking about last time, because it's so interesting when the 76ers are such a weird tanking team. Because before, when they did this, you kind of knew what they were doing from the jump, right? You knew that they wanted a tank, that they wanted to invest in their future. And this year, it's interesting because I saw a tweet from you earlier, too. This is a team we thought in October of September that could go on the Eastern Conference Finals run. And now you're looking at a team that is trying to tank to get a top 6 pick overall. But I bring that up because there's a lot of players that are trying to go out there. They're trying to give it their all. They're trying to either stay on this team or get looked at by other NBA teams. I want to say outside of Quentin Grimes, because I think we know what he can do, and he's been going off. He had 29 points last night. Who do you like from the 76ers unit right now? And it's not really their true unit. I know it's a lot of guys that we probably wouldn't see or would not even have standard NBA deals if the whole team wasn't intact. But what performances are you liking right now that maybe you could see do well with this team overall?
I mean, are you talking in regards to newcomers, in regards to young players?
Let's do newcomers. Okay. Let's do newcomers and see how they would overall work with.
All right. Well, let me say, here's the one person that I will say who, this guy isn't a newcomer, but he's a young player. I think what Bona is doing is basically showing you that, again, now these games have been the majority of these guys who are excelling in the last couple of games that they played are either young draft picks, two-way guys, or guys recently becoming two-way, or G League guys getting the call up, right? Whatever, you know what I mean, or whatever. But the one guy who's really been impressive to me the last 3 games has been Bona, right? You look at Adem. Yesterday he had 13 points on 5 for 7 shooting. He had 9 rebounds. He had 2 blocks. He had a steal. He had an assist, right? So this guy has really impressed me the most. Because when we looked at him, again, we're talking about the quality of the competition isn't to the level that it was, it would be against playing the Lakers or the Golden State Warriors, whatnot, or any other team. But the fact that here's a guy that gave you 13-9 and has been shooting at a high percentage the last 3 games, to me, that has been extremely impressive. So that's the one guy that I would have to say. Now, Justin Edwards, on the other hand, he's been struggling mightily the last couple games. He would have 4 points on 2 for 8 shooting. He was 0 for 5 on 3 this last game. So he really has to get it together, because he's a guy who just got his contract converted, but he's just been struggling as of late to find that shot.
And it's interesting with Justin Edwards, too, because I feel like he almost played better when Tyrese Maxey was in the lineup or when Paul George was in the lineup, because they could get him open shots. They could give him opportunities because teams are collapsing on a Tyrese Maxey, right? Mm-hmm. You get Justin Edwards out on the wing. He shoots a 3. There you go. You're good to go. And I feel that on this team, he has to create more for himself. The chemistry's not all there. You have a lot of guys that are just kind of getting thrown out there from that standpoint. But Adem Bona, I'm glad you bring that up because it's really interesting to me, because yesterday when we were talking on the podcast, we're talking about draft picks and who else outside of Cooper Flagg, because we all know he's most likely going to go number 1. It'd be crazy if he didn't. But we were looking at some centers that possibly the 76ers could look at to back up Joel Embiid and, an aging Andre Drummond, in addition to Malawach from Duke, in addition to the Derek Queen from University of Maryland. We were going back and forth. So if you're Adem Bona, you have to know that your position as well can be really beneficial to what the 76ers are looking to build behind Joel Embiid for the future too. And I'm not saying Adem Bona to me is not going to be a Joel Embiid, but if you can have a legitimate backup guy that can go in there and can get some blocks and get some points and make the most of his minutes. The 76ers have had issues with that for years, somebody backing up Joel Embiid. Drummond did it better the last time he was with Philadelphia, but I think Adem Bona is trying to prove himself from that standpoint as well, because even if you draft a center, that guy automatically is not going to be able to back up Joel Embiid. It's just not going to happen. So Adem Bona can kind of be that middle guy, per se, I guess, Keith, in this situation, if the 76ers like the product that he's putting out there.
Yeah, I think the difference with him, I think because, Adem Bona is listed as 6'10". Yeah. He's only really 6'7", 6'8". So to me, I look at him as a guy who is always probably going to be the third center. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Honestly, because of the height. He's kind of like a change of pace type of guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because if not, when we look at it, if not, he would probably be starting some of these games. But, he's kind of like when they had Paul Reed, they had Dwight Howard, they had Drummond the first time, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, Paul, we got you as a change of pace type of guy. But there's one player who's really been struggling a lot lately. It seems like his play has regressed. And I think a lot of that has to do with, I think he's thinking too much. I think he realizes that, what, I'm a guy, I'm on a non-guaranteed contract for next year, and I got to produce. And I think he's thinking too much. And that player is Ricky Council IV. Ricky had 11 points. He shot 3 for 14. He was 1 for 7 on threes. And he missed at least 3 layups. I stopped losing count after that, right? Yeah. So he missed at least 3 layups. He made some decisions where there were times where, you felt like, okay, Ricky, shoot the ball. But what he would do is he would pull it down and then try to pass it to someone, and then it's like a little turnover. So to me, he's a guy that's really been struggling as of late, and I feel like a lot of that is mental. He's not playing like he did back in November and December when he just came in and just basically did whatever he could to help the team out as an energy guy. Now he's just making, like I said, a lot of poor decisions, and is shooting atrocious from the field.
And he's not playing like the guy that helped him get off of that two-way contract as well that ended up getting him in the NBA. I want to go back to Ricky Council after the break as well, because he was on assignment for the Blue Coats not that long ago. So I want to go back to that conversation. We do have to break in just this moment, but we will talk on that and more for the Sixers ahead when we come back. And in this break, we have to tell you about FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. Picking my favorites, I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props as well. Staying in the action. With tournament games happening almost every single day, there's always something exciting to bet on. Easy and fast. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Make sure you don't miss out on it today. So Ricky Council is struggling a little bit, and I want to go back to when he was on assignment with the Blue Coats, because he had a 40-point game, which was an NBA G League career high for him, as soon as he gets brought down on assignment by the Philadelphia 76ers. Nick Nurse was in attendance for that game, and I talked about this last time we talked about Ricky Council, because this is something we mentioned a few days ago as well, somebody we want to see kind of get that confidence back during a time where he has the opportunity to be able to. And Nick Nurse said, we want to send him down to the G because we wanted to give him an opportunity to get a lot of minutes, to get more comfortable. I was able to talk to Ricky Council. He said that he's just trying to get back into that game shape and everything in between, and going up and down the floor and being relied on more. And I almost feel, we just talked about Justin Edwards playing a little bit better with the Tyrese Maxey and a Paul George. I almost feel with Ricky Council, he feels like he needs to do too much. He feels like he needs to be the guy to stick out. And maybe in his mind, he's saying, well, if I'm not the guy to stick out, then why would this team want me? Because all these other guys are having this opportunity to do so. And this is an opportunity for me to be able to rise above and shine due to not having a Joel Embiid, a Paul George, a Tyrese Maxey, and everybody else that can't play for the 76ers squad. So I think it's a tough situation for Ricky Council right now. You hope for the guy that he can kind of get out of that rut a little bit, because it can be such a mental game too, Keith. And we're seeing that with some of these guys right now, but this is really their time to shine, but you also can't overthink it. I know it's easier said than done.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, him going down to the G League and scoring 40 points. I mean, that's nice. But at the same time, most of those NBA guys go down there and get buckets easily.
Yeah,
exactly. It's a complete difference.
Right.
And to be honest with you, him going down to the G League, I think that was more so for them to say, hey, look, you got to get your confidence back. See, afterwards, look what you're doing. Look what you're doing. Because afterwards, when he came back, he didn't sound overly confident. Like, he sounded like a guy like, oh, yeah, they got some good players down there, this and that, da. It's like, nah, dog, like, you supposed to go down there and say, yeah, I came down there to put in some work, to work on some things, right? But when he starts saying they had good players, and that's what it is. It's kind of like he just looks like a guy who's thinking too much. A guy who, like, if you're going to be honest, he sees Quentin Grimes come in.
Yeah.
He sees Justin Edwards. He sees Lonnie Walker come in. And although that he's listed as a power forward, he's kind of like a wing. Like he's like, a forward. He can do interchangeable things, kind of like they do. You look at Yabusele. So it's one of those things where, he's like, guys are trying to get paid next year. How is this going to impact me? Because you got Justin Edwards, who's going to be ahead of him. You got Yabu, who's going to be ahead of him, and Quentin. These are wings. And then not only that, although he's a point guard / two guard, he's going to be in a rotation, talking about Jared McCain. So there's a lot going on. And then you got a guy like, here's another player, Eric Gordon, who has a player option. So it's one of those things where he's looking at it as if, like, I need to do something. But no, bro, what you need to do is you need to be that energy guy like you were before. Because if you think back to November, not to repeat myself, when they were rolling, it was him and KJ Martin.
Yep.
They were the ones coming off the bench. KJ would start at certain times, and they were just balling, those two. And they were doing a lot of great things. And he just has to get back there and do those and stop thinking. Because when he goes out there and thinks, he makes mistakes, and he looks like he's hurting the team. You know what I mean? So he just needs to go back and play.
Yeah, and sometimes when he drives to the basket too, it's so full force energy and he has so much power, and we've seen that in his dunks and everything. But it's almost like he's changing his mind in midair. It's like, oh, should I go for a layup? Should I go pass? Should I try to do, a big time dunk? It seems like when he's up in the air, even it's not all clicking for him. And you hope that he can get back to that, because he is a fun player to watch overall. You want to bring that energy to the team, especially during a time like this, and he has that. He just got to go out there and be Ricky Council and play basketball. But the 76ers, they do have the day off in terms of gameplay as well. They play the Pacers tomorrow at 7 p.m. Yes, that is on Friday at 7 p.m. And that is going to be in the Wells Fargo Center at Philadelphia. So, Keith, before we send things off, I want to kind of talk about what's been going around the NBA and how the Utah Jazz just got fined $100,000 and all these things that could happen with the Sixers in terms of player participation. I don't necessarily think it will, because a lot of their guys are genuinely injured at the same time.
You
but
think?
I don't know. I mean, they did go after Joel Embiid. So I think Adam Silver may have his eyes on the 76ers a little bit, but they're going to have their eyes on a lot of teams, because those 5 teams, we're talking about the Jazz that got fined, those guys are trying. We saw the Jazz try to lose against the Philadelphia 76ers. So I don't want to say they're in trouble right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if some, things start to come out about that, and the 76ers may have to be more careful from that standpoint.
I mean, all of them do. But see, I hate to say it, it's the NBA's problem. I mean, when you look at the NBA, unfortunately, there's only about 4 or 5 teams max, that has a chance of actually winning the championship. Maybe 6, 3 on each side, right? So when you look at that, and the incentive is, if you can't win a championship, it's best to get a quality lottery pick, because you don't want to. It's worse to be the team that finished 8th and you lost in the first round, but you don't have a quality pick, right? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that this is something that they should have addressed a long time ago. And I think this is part of why, this is why they did away with, if you don't play X amount of games, you can't be, eligible for in-season awards. Yeah. It's also why they came back and said, we need star players must play on national televised game. Well, the problem is people don't care anymore. Like, players are like, hey, I'm getting paid. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. The teams are paying these fines, so they don't care. So, yeah, they need to address it. I mean, they say Kyle Lowry's hurt, right? And he does have a little bit of injury, but he works out before every game, 3 hours before the game, right? Tyrese Maxey, they're saying he has a sprained back, right? And, they're saying that such and such, missing the game because of management, all these things. So they're being extremely vague, which makes you feel like, is it really that bad? What's going on? So it's a lot of things. Even look at Joel Embiid. They said that he's having, meeting with these doctors to see what the next course of action is. We haven't heard anything yet. Mm-mm. We haven't heard
crickets over there. It's been crickets over there. Exactly. And also $100,000 to these organizations is probably like $10 to us. So it really doesn't make too much of a difference, unless they really hammered it down and saying, well, you're losing a top pick or anything like that. But that would cause a lot of chaos for a lot of those teams that are currently trying to fight for that lottery spot, which the 76ers did last night and still trying to do. Once again, they fall to the Toronto Raptors 118 to 105. They are back in action tomorrow. That tip-off is at 7 p.m. against the Pacers. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers with Keith Pompey. I'm Kayla Santiago saying so long, and we'll see you guys next time.